The Holy Family, 1845. Translated by Richard Dixon. Published in November 1844, this book was the first full collaboration between Marx and Friedrich Engels. It is a critique of the young Hegelians and their trend of thought that was popular in academic circles at the time. The title was a suggestion by the publisher and is intended as an ironic reference to the Bauer brothers and their supporters. The book created a controversy with much of the press and caused Bruno Bauer to attempt to refute it in an article published in Wiegand's Vierteljahrschrift in 1845. Bauer claimed that Marx and Engels misunderstood what he was trying to say. Marx later replied to his response with his own article that was published in the journal Gesellschaftsspiegel in January 1846. During Engels' short stay in Paris in 1844, Marx suggested that they should write together a critique of the popular topic of their day, the young Hegelians. While working on the project, their friendship blossomed. Agreeing to co-author the foreword, they divided up the other sections. Engels finished his assigned chapters before leaving Paris. Marx had the larger share of work, and he completed it by the end of November 1844. He drew from his economic and philosophic manuscripts on which he had been working the spring and summer of 1844. The Holy Family caused considerable interest in the newspapers. One paper noted that it expressed socialist views, since it criticized the inadequacy of any half measures directed at eliminating the social ailments of our time. The conservative press immediately recognized the radical elements inherent in its many arguments. One paper wrote that, in the Holy Family, every line preaches revolt against the state, the church, the family, legality, religion, and property. The first edition's title, page, contents, foreword. Chapter 1, Critical Criticism in the Form of a Master Bookbinder, or Critical Criticism as Herr Reichardt. Chapter 2, Critical Criticism as a Mill Owner, or Critical Criticism as Herr Jules Fauscher. Chapter 3, The Thoroughness of Critical Criticism, or Critical Criticism as Herr J. Jungnitz. Chapter 4, Critical Criticism as the Tranquility of Knowledge, or Critical Criticism as Herr Edgar. Chapter 5, Critical Criticism as a Mystery Monger, or Critical Criticism as Herr Schelliger. Chapter 6, Absolute Critical Criticism, or Critical Criticism as Herr Bruno. Chapter 7, Critical Criticism's Correspondence. Chapter 8, The Earthly Course and Transfiguration of Critical Criticism, or Critical Criticism as Rudolf, Prince of Gerolstein. Chapter 9, The Critical Last Judgment. Source of text, Marxist's Internet Archive. Engels, 1877. Foreword. Real humanism has no more dangerous enemy than spiritualism or speculative idealism, which substitutes self-consciousness or the spirit for the real, individual man, and, with the evangelist teaches, it is the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. Needless to say, this incorporeal spirit is spiritual only in its imagination. What we are combating in Bauer's criticism is precisely speculation reproducing itself as a caricature. We see a complete expression of the Christian Germanic principle, which makes its last effort by transforming criticism itself into a transcendent power. Our exposition deals first and foremost with Bruno Bauer's Allgemeine Literaturzeitung. The first 8 numbers are here before us, because in it Bauer's criticism, and with it the nonsense of German speculation in general, has reached its peak. The more completely critical criticism, the criticism of the Literaturzeitung, distorts reality into an obvious comedy through philosophy, the more instructive it is. For examples, see Fauscher and Schelliger. The Literaturzeitung offers material by which even the broad public can be enlightened on the illusions of speculative philosophy. That is the aim of our book. Our exposition is naturally determined by its subject. Critical criticism is in all respects below the level already attained by German theoretical development. The nature of our subject therefore justifies our refraining here from further discussion of that development itself. Critical makes it necessary rather to assert, in contrast to it, the already achieved results as such. We therefore give this polemic as a preliminary to the independent works in which we, each of us for himself of course, shall present our positive view, and thereby our positive attitude to the more recent philosophical anti-social doctrines. Paris, September 1844.
Paris, September 1844. Engels, Marx. Chapter 1. Critical criticism in the form of a master bookbinder, or critical criticism as Herr Reichardt. Critical criticism, however superior to the mass it deems itself, nevertheless has boundless pity for the mass. And therefore criticism has so loved the mass that it sent its only begotten Son, that all who believe in him may not be lost, but may have critical life. Criticism was made mass and dwells amongst us, and we behold its glory, the glory of the only begotten Son of the Father. In other words, criticism becomes socialistic and speaks of works on pauperism. It considers it not a crime to be equal to God, but empties itself and takes the form of a bookbinder and humbles itself even to nonsense, yea, even to critical nonsense in foreign languages. It, whose heavenly virginal purity shrinks from contact with the sinful, leprous mass, overcomes itself to the extent of taking notice of Boz and all original writers on pauperism, and has for years been following this evil of the present time step by step. It scorns writing for experts. It writes for the general public, banning all outlandish expressions, all Latin intricacies, all professional jargon. It bans all that from the works of others, for it would be too much to expect criticism itself to submit to this administrative regulation.
And yet it does do so partly, renouncing with admirable ease, if not the words themselves, at least their content. And who will reproach it for using the huge heap of unintelligible foreign words, when it repeatedly proves that it does not understand those words itself? Here are a few samples. That is why the institutions of mendicancy inspire them with horror, a doctrine of responsibility in which every motion of human thought becomes an image of Lot's wife. On the keystone of this really profound edifice of art, this is the main content of Stein's political testament, which the great statesman handed in, even before retiring from the active service of the government, and from all its transactions. This people had not yet any dimensions at that time for such extensive freedom, by palavering with fair assurance at the end of his publicistic work that only confidence was still lacking to the manly state-elevating understanding, rising above routine and pusillanimous fear, reared on history and nurtured with a live perception of foreign public state system. The education of general national welfare. Freedom lay dead in the breast of the Prussian national mission, under the control of the authorities, popular organic publicism. The people to whom even Herr Bruggemann delivers the baptismal certificate of its adulthood, a rather glaring contradiction to the other certitudes which are expressed in the work on the professional capacities of the people. Wretched self-interest quickly dispels all the chimeras of the national will. Passion for great gains, etc. was the spirit that pervaded the whole of the Restoration period, and which, with a fair quantity of indifference, adhered to the New Age. The vague idea of political significance to be found in the Prussian countrymanship nationality rests on the memory of a great history. The antipathy disappeared and turned into a completely exalted condition. In this wonderful transition, each one in his own way still put forward, in prospect his own special wish, a catechism with unctuous, Solomon-like language, the words of which rise gently like a dove, chirp, chirp, to the regions of pathos and thunder-like aspects. All the dilettantism of 35 years of neglect. The too sharp thundering at the citizens by one of their former town authorities could have been suffered with the calmness of mind characteristic of our representatives, if Bender's view of the town charter of 1808 had not labored under a Mussulman conceptual affliction with regard to the essence and the application of the town charter. In Herr Reichardt, the audacity of style always corresponds to the audacity of the thought. He makes transitions like the following. Herr, 1843. State theory. Every upright man. The great modesty of our socialists. Natural marvels. Demands to be made on Germany. Supernatural marvels. Abraham, Philadelphia. Manor, Baker. But since we are speaking of marvels, Napoleon brought, etc. after these samples, it is no wonder that critical criticism gives us a further explanation of a sentence which it itself describes as expressed in popular language, for it arms its eyes with organic power to penetrate chaos. And here it must be said that then even popular language cannot remain unintelligible to critical criticism. It is aware that the way of the writer must necessarily be a crooked one if the individual who sets out on it is not strong enough to make it straight, and therefore it naturally ascribes mathematical operations to the author. It is self-evident, and history, which proves everything which is self-evident, also proves this, that criticism does not become mass in order to remain mass, but in order to redeem the mass from its mass-like mass nature, that is, to raise the popular language of the mass to the critical language of critical criticism. It is the lowest grade of degradation, for criticism to learn the popular language of the mass and transfigure that vulgar jargon into the high-flown intricacy of the dialectics of critical criticism.